Oh, right. And we are live, I suppose.
Mhm.
Awesome. Kunal, welcome to our kind of AI investment and educational series that I'm trying to really get together. I have a very special guest with me today, Kunal Topra, and he is not only the investor, he's entrepreneur and forward thinker in AI technology. And I love to hear your thoughts and dive deeper today into the challenges and trends that we see that how AI adoption and investment have shifted from 2024 and what to expect in 2025. Now, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and your story?
Sure, sure. Well, Eva, thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it, and for everyone on the channel right now, really excited to be here. But yeah, I'm essentially the CEO and founder of an AI first platform called Certivo. Certivo essentially is an regulatory and compliance management platform that's specifically targeted towards manufacturers. And we use AI to essentially automate and streamline this entire process to help, you get to market quickly, because compliance, we believe, is a big bottleneck in the entire manufacturing workflow. And AI presents some really good use cases for us to be able to automate that process. I've been in the tech industry the last 20 years. I was the CEO of two companies prior to founding Certivo, one private equity backed, the other publicly traded. I've been in big tech. I was a general manager at both Amazon and Microsoft. I ran multi-million dollar P&Ls there. I've also been in the entrepreneurial world. I was an early employee at Groupon. At the time, it was one of the fastest growing startups in the world, went from zero to a public offering in less than 4 years. I've also been the chief operating officer for another venture backed esports betting company that eventually sold to a large strategic. In a prior life, I was a software engineer that transitioned into building tech businesses through my MBA from the University of Chicago. But yeah, I'm very, I'm certainly very bullish about everything AI and where the future is. Although, there's a lot, a lot of us are learning as we go in this journey. A lot of customers, enterprises are learning, and it's just exciting to see how the industry is changing shape. But it's also interesting to see and have a great discussion today on what folks should pay attention to, keep track of, etc. Yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Sounds good. And Kunal, you obviously have been around the block. And I did preliminary research since I've been in the AI business for a long time and in high tech for as long as I can remember myself. Think the interesting trends happening is that there was a hype boom in 2024 where pretty much investors were throwing millions and millions of dollars in anything that had AI. And there was a lot of memes even going around that like, hey, if you put a AI sticker on it, you'll get like instant valuation, instant raise capital. But we see the trend that it's actually slowing down quite substantially. And we're not towards the end of 2025. But initial research actually shows the drop in the number of deals that VC baked AI companies and investors are engaging in. And I wonder what your thoughts about this and what could be potential reasons for the cooling down of the investment dynamics.
Yeah, I think, like, my opinion on these things are very simple. Like, it's the VC community or the investment community always jumps onto all the hype cycles. And, I think AI was was a buzzword, last year or maybe the year before that, as well. But the true use cases of where AI can be applicable, or what true uses a particular company can get from it, were yet to be clarified. And the ROI, like we have discussed as well, that an investment that AI can bring to your organization was yet to be determined. And I think that is happening, no doubt, slowly. But I think a lot of the hype folks are sort of out of the way now, and the true opportunities and the folks left on the table right now are, essentially the folks who really care about, where you AI can truly add value. Is it in a creating enough value that, relative to maybe some human approach, it's significantly better, and the cost of the investment truly justifies that sort of, return on investment. So I think that's sort of the crust of it, is just the signal has been, and the noise has been sort of separated at some level. We're now focusing more on signal, and a lot of the noisy investments are essentially behind us. We saw that in other cycles. A few years back, we had the whole crypto and NFT, and everyone jumped on the same bandwagon. And again, you see unsophisticated investors who have no idea what they're doing, and just putting in money and deploying capital into companies that have a word like AI, or someone says, "Hey, I'm AI powered this and AI powered that," and you essentially get an investment. I think we're behind that now, in my view.
I think you're right. And I think we're over the hype of the so called wrappers. I think the investors, as well as the enterprise or mid-sized businesses, are getting more educated about the difference between the large players, key players like Microsoft, Amazon, Google, OpenAI, and so on, and so-called wrappers, right? The kind of no-name, home-baked couple of code automation slapped with ChatGPT startups, and there's so many of them actually got completely wiped out in the second half of 2024 as the new model releases with great functionalities start biting in one after another, and one model gets instantly better than another one. I'm talking about large language models. And
Yeah.
I remember back in 2024, end of 2023, we actually had this like huge hype, like, hey, you can code with AI, when the AI models were not able to do that yet. Now all of those startups or so-called startups completely wiped out and they're replaced. So there is a difference, right? In understanding what the wrapper really is and what actually the enabling of the technology. And I love how you said that your company is not like in just another AI solution. It's AI first SaaS business. That makes perfect sense. Can you elaborate a little more about this, and what is the key differentiator that the investors and business owners need to be aware of?
Yeah, and this brings up a fascinating argument, right? Or a fascinating conversation around what deserves to be its own product and or solution versus what can be just built by one of the large LLMs. One has to always question the fundamentals, like why wouldn't OpenAI just build what you're trying to build? And and why should you be a separate company or not just an app on OpenAI? Or why can't OpenAI just make an investment in something? And I'm using OpenAI as an example for any other large language model provider. And that brings up some of the things that we should certainly discuss. And I'll give you my perspective on some of these things. One is, in any sort of AI approach, or whether you should build an AI company or not, first is the first question. And typically I look at it from a lens of a few things. Number one is, are you dealing with a lot of data? And so, if you're dealing with a lot of data, it's likely, maybe there's some aspect of AI that can handle it, blah, 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 and, be able to analyze it quickly. Number two is, who is operating on that data? Who needs to operate on that data? And when I say who, I mean, is it really high level knowledge work that needs to operate on that data versus very low level data entry sort of work? If you're trying to build an AI company, it's likely you want to work with the high level knowledge work. And why? Because if it's just data entry work, I can get the same cost advantages of AI by just outsourcing it to a country or some other place that has cheaper labor, for example, and they can do the data entry work, and it doesn't require me to have some specialized knowledge, etc. So if you're dealing with a lot of data, if you're dealing with high level knowledge work, and then the third piece is around repeatability. Is there some sort of repeatability in that work that this this very skilled knowledge worker has to come in day in and day out, and then maybe repeat that task again and again and again? And okay, now that I have that, potentially AI can help solve for some of these problems. Great. So now I know that I want to build an AI company. Now, the second challenge is, why wouldn't OpenAI sort of build this, or maybe some other LLM provider build it? That's the fourth sort of question you got to ask. And typically, what I've seen is, when you embed yourselves in workflows that are very, very complicated and difficult, then it's likely the case that some LLM provider is not going to enter in that space. So, and now it becomes the question of niche, right? What niche am I working in? So in my particular case, in Certivo's case, we are very embedded into compliance and regulatory workflows within the manufacturing enterprise. So for OpenAI or any other company to really build that or build a competitor to Certivo, they have to really go deep into manufacturing. They need to understand those workflows. They have to be very embedded into what these compliance engineers do day in and day out. And likely is not the case that they want to go there. And that's where they want to empower folks like myself to say, hey, you should be building on top of my APIs as opposed to I'm going to go build a competitive product, to you. The workflows are so specific to those particular that it's not some generic workflow around reading of documents and analyzing them, etc. You have to be very embedded into what these compliance engineers, compliance managers do on a day-to-day basis. And so that's where I've seen the companies, at least the ones who are winning out there, is did you meet those three criteria first, and then is your are the workflows in the enterprise so custom and deep to your particular use case that it just makes sense that I have to build a product that is very AI first. It's embedded into what this persona is going to do day in and day out. That's kind of just to give you a sense of my framework of how I think about some of these things.
Makes perfect sense. And I think that's very critical for investors and enterprise businesses alike to really understand whether they want to outsource and go buy solution or build a homegrown one. Whether the question, do you need to get an external services and whether AI is even applicable. I believe that the combination of both worlds, the AI, the workflow automations plus AI technology can deliver a much greater return on investment and much more robust and scalable solution rather than slap AI on every single step of the way. And I think that's an important aspect to really dive deeper in is that AI may not be necessary for all of the aspects of the workflows. And it's funny when we call the automation or workflow automations AI agents, which is really not the case and shouldn't be the case in all of the scenarios. A lot of processes can be automated in a simple workflow that saves resources, improve the ROI, and improve the speed of processing. We were able to do that before even AI hype. With the power of AI, we can do it more efficiently, faster, and close these necessary gaps where the say outcome is unknown, right? Or there's a excessive data processing has to take place. What are your thoughts about the workflows versus AI agents right now, the new hype term?
Yeah, you're 100% right, and bingo, you hit the nail on the head. It's not like automation is new in this world. We've been doing automation for years, right? And many companies haven't done it or haven't caught up with it. I think with AI, we have now been presented with more use cases and more interesting use cases that previously likely couldn't be automated with existing solutions in the market. And then now we can imagine a new world where data that was very unstructured in nature, in my particular case, reading off and analyzing some of that data was a difficult problem. And now with with existing LLMs and other models out there, the ability to be able to do that, has suddenly presented a use case. I can finally say, well, I have this very expensive knowledge worker here that I don't want to replace, but in order for me to be able to scale effectively, I have to add 10 of that particular person. But instead, what if I added two and then also added an AI? And then that combination, isn't that a better investment for me as opposed to being able to go and hire 10 more people? So I think companies can finally think about those use cases as well. But one thing that companies should certainly not do, and I've seen this with others as well, is essentially, to your point, slap on AI for everything. And you have to identify the use case that really makes sense. AI is not the end all be all for, and it's certainly not that, and it's certainly not replacement as well. So one thing people also fear a lot with AI is it's going to take my job away, etc. And I think that's another misnomer, and it's just something in this industry is AI has to be looked at an enabler, an empowerer, as opposed to a replacer. There is We are not even close to, in my view, at least, AI replacing humans or completely taking over the average person's use case like me. I'm not talking about self-driving cars or any of that. I'm just talking about just use cases you see in the day in and day out enterprise. But I do see a world where AI and humans can really come together well to get the advantages of what AI can bring to the table. And if the mindset changes around, can I augment my team with better AI? Can I, and can I get scalable advantages now through that? Can I get better ROI because I don't have to make significant people investment? And with a smaller team and an AI, I can actually now get the advantages that typically in the past a very large team would have to get. Now I've caused a win. So that's, I think, the way, at least, my perspective on this is.
That's great. And what I see that this statistics actually leads us to another discussion, what I think you've touched briefly.
Yes.
The AI implementations and optimizations or automation process, it requires an investment. And we've seen the drastic budget growth and large enterprise companies setting up dollars for AI dash automation processes constantly. And this budget is actually growing. However, the usage of AI, it's primarily dominant into the mid-sized company that I think is much more agile in terms of regulations, compliance, and procurement process. It's much more tangible and feasible to adopt new technologies rapidly, where the large enterprises are tagged up into the red tape, compliance, legal matters that slows down the adoption process. But what's shocking is actually in the research that the only 1% of the companies, the mid-sized and large companies, are actually fully matured AI adoption processes. And I'm talking about large enterprises. And the reasons for these challenges is quite shocking, but we've touched briefly about this. I've done the analysis of the surveys that took out for just recent quarters, and there's 6 elements that actually drive those challenges, right? Then the reasons for slowing down, and culture is one of them. The data complexity, right? If you have garbage in, garbage out, it really, have to have your ducks in a row to make sure that it's effectively. The skill gaps, right? Who is going to be doing it? You can bring the latest technology, but you don't have a people who actually know and understand it and can take it to the next level. So upskilling is a huge, huge take for the talent gaps. And in cultural, I think you brought up the very good point. People are scared. They fear about job losses, their cultural collaborations on the implementation project is broken. So it's not an AI problem, it's the people problem at the end of the day.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I can touch on some of these as well. And let's talk a little bit of the skills and talent gap. That's an area that I've certainly witnessed. I've seen a lot of enterprises and their willingness to, want to do AI projects, want to pilot a few projects, etc. But they just don't have the talent to be able to do so. I mean, AI, building any AI first product or embedding AI into the workflows that we talked about requires sophisticated prompt engineering, requires folks to really understand models and how to tune them, how to work with them. It requires optimization of infrastructure. You can imagine things like, how am I creating my infrastructure to make different calls to different LLMs, stuff like that. Again, this is not someone who's woken up in the morning and said, well, I've already done this in the past. It's not. Everyone is doing this, today for the first time. CTOs are learning how to do this on the fly. And so you really have this gap. And with all due respect to all other companies out there, it's very hard for you to attract that kind of talent that typically is working on in Silicon Valley, is working with the Googles and the Metas, etc., into your mid-market enterprise. They are not going to leave their, cushy jobs where they're working on cutting edge stuff to go join a manufacturing firm, for example, tomorrow, and to go build out that project. And then you're going to have it's going to be harder for you to go attract other talent and build a team around it, unless you want to make a significant technology investment within your organization. So I think that's also important for people to understand is, do you really want to be a AI shop internally and rather do all this and manage this, or you want to work with the right service providers, etc., who have already figured out what it takes to be able to build solutions like these. I think that's one big area, of concern, certainly. And I've seen some organizations try to do it internally, and then they're approaching it very incorrectly, and then they've spent 6 months and 8 months just trying to figure it out on their own, and they couldn't hire the right people, and it's, what a wasted time, right? So instead, you might as well like work with the right providers who've been there, done that, and who can solve for the use cases and can also bring in AI into your organization. The cultural resistance thing is a big one that we touched upon. Is I think again people think of AI just incorrectly. For me as a CEO, I'm a lot more effective when I use AI tools to do my job. And when I say my job, I think about use cases like I have to send a report to my manager or to my board of directors. I use AI to write the report. I need to do a competitive analysis. I use one of the models to do a competitive analysis to see what my competitors are up to. Things like that has made me a lot more effective. It's not replacing me as a CEO, right? It's just enabling me. It's empowering me to do my job better. And I encourage everyone to look at their version of AI in the same way as well as saying, hey, if in my case, if Certi was giving you a tool, it's not replacing you. It is empowering you to go faster. It's empowering you to, to scale quickly so that you can do your job a lot more better and hopefully get promoted, et cetera, in your job. And I think that change in mindset has to come, which unfortunately isn't there yet with a lot of people.
That's very true. And I want to slide back for just a second to really bring this home. You see from the usage, right, or the desire, the budget versus the full maturity of the application, it's a humongous gap. And I think this gap creates a tremendous opportunities for the companies to become an enablers of AI technology and help those mid-size and enterprise companies to become more AI savvy and more AI literate. And the question is that, again, to your point, enterprise companies should not try to become the first subject matter experts in AI technologies and automations. They should focus on what they are doing best. They should be, oops, sorry, I have some calls coming in the lifetime here.
Time.
I mean, I hope that's not in my AI agents calling me. So partnering with the right partners, and that leads to another question. So how do you determine who is the right partner to go with? There's so many misinformation or hype AI influencers that claim, or consultants in one, two man mom pop shops. They're claiming to do the things and they chat GPT their way through as the go enablement process. And I think there's a lot of people trying to tap into this potential, believing that the chat GPT can make them a subject matter experts in AI. And that causes that 6 to 12 months development. They're locking into the single model versions. They're misguiding the enterprises and create a lot of misinformation. I run into the situations in our onboarding calls when the senior executives who are supposed to be the knowledgeable people, at least to a certain extent, that they need to be asking the questions that are completely irrelevant and purely not true because someone before told them that's the case. And I'm curious, what are your thoughts about it? Because they're feeling that they've been cheated into this AI hype. Everybody becomes AI subject matter experts overnight. So how you distinguish who to partner with and who to trust yourself to go with? Again, I'll share just quickly my thoughts. I
Yeah.
mean, I believe that if in any consultancy aspect, we are as a SaaS driven companies still focus on selling our solution, our product based, but we're also supporting our learning curve of our customers. We are the subject matter expert who actually do what we do, and we're this consultancy agents that meant to be fired. That we don't want to build a dependency because that's not our pure bread and butter. We don't want to build a long term dependency on us to deliver you AI solution and build you future forward AI first company. But we want to be that stepping stone to give you the tools, to give you expertise, to give you the training so you can upskill your personnel and take it to the next level internally. It's not, don't want to be a permanent crutches for you to kind of tug along. I would not want somebody to see that they have to constantly depend on external resources to drive the innovations forward.
Yeah, I think you made a great point. There are several trust factors or indicators that can tell you whether you should, work with a particular provider or not. There are some standard ones that I think we're all used to, whether you're an AI solution or not. Do you have the right brand? Have you worked with the right customers? All those sort of things, of course, one should obviously check for. But in the AI specific use cases, what I have also seen, and especially in Certivo's cases, is Can you work for a period of time before you commit on a small or short pilot that can make sure that you're fully aligned on those use cases that you really care about? And what we have seen is that's been a good way for us to give sort of a preview to our clients on how it would be to work with us, for example. So for about a month, when we onboard a client, we actually recommend it to the client. We say, hey, I don't want you to buy anything from us. Let's work for the next month for free. Let us prove the value to you. You should use the platform. Let's get your data in. Let's make sure that all the use cases that you care about are working for you. And if that works and you enjoy this relationship, then let's go into some long-term contract, etc. And I've seen that be, very successful in terms of sort of again moving away from the signal versus noise conversation that we were discussing. Is you can focus on the providers who are truly value creating. They work with your workflows. They care about your data. They're building a relationship with you. They're educating you, like you said, they can preview what it takes to work with an AI solution as opposed to just buying some SaaS offering that has some AI in it, and then you're like sort of left on your own. The other thing that we all have to learn about AI and we have to realize is in the old world of AI, or sorry, in the old world of software, you could be quite independent at some level in software as a service offerings. You could get access to a software and you're pretty much done. In the AI world, you can't be fully independent. And there is an aspect of a human that has to be part of this entire process. That period, right? At least where we are today. AI is not 100% automated, whether we like it or not. And so you're going to see 80, 90% of the workflows in a good case that are automated. But the last 10%, some human has to come into the loop. So, and we call it human in the loop.
Mhm.
So if we think about it from that logic, you as an AI first company are now not a software as a service company. You are
The
technically an
outcome.
agency.
Yes, absolutely.
You're operating like an agency, right? So you have to now follow the same model like an agency does at some level. So you have to work closely with your clients. You have to be on the same Slack groups or Teams groups with them. You have to sort of that approach has to change versus saying I'm just giving you a software and then you're on your own. And I think that's the sort of mindset change. It's like you have to think more like an agency.
Yes, yeah, absolutely right. And I think that's a huge competitive advantage for the company who understand this and hold the hands of their customers through the early adoptions because we are figuring it out how AI working can help us and bring the ROI together. And the key aspect here and the key word here is together. We, as the providers, also figure out how to best serve our customers and how to drive return on investment. That understanding your pain points, understanding where it's applicable, educating ourselves as well as educating you where it's applicable and can help you to drive the desired outcomes. And I want to touch a little bit about the optimization and a human in the loop. You're absolutely right. The executives can make a decision that yes, we want AI tomorrow. We want to be AI first company. We want to be forward thinkers. But the stickiness of the solution really lives on the mid layers and the doers of the companies.
Mhm,
Those people actually make the solution stick. They actually one that actually prove you that it can work and empowers their day-to-day jobs. And those are the people actually afraid from losing their jobs and be misplaced. And we're facing this probably more than you are because we're in contact centers,
mhm,
AI powered voice technology optimization. I ask this all the time in from the senior executive, like how many heads I can cut down. And I kind of like pause in here because I know and I understand that in order for my solution to be stick and serve the people, I need to not only have a buy-ins from the executives and platform owners from ServiceNow, Pega, Appian, whatever, Salesforce, but I also
mhm,
need a buy-in from the people who actually will be working as side by side. And when we create the digital workforce, we want to create a companions that actually do the job that no one really wants to do and it's very repetitive and redundant and
mhm,
empower you to learn the skills how you can become the AI voice agent manager, how
mhm,
you can interfere through the human in a loop interaction, how you can guide and navigate and make those AI agents better so you become 10x or 20x more productive. You
mhm.
acquire new skills, you become stay relevant in your job market.
Mhm.
Because nowadays, I mean, I don't know what's your hiring process, but I would not hire even the junior person on my team if they don't have the basic AI understanding literacy. And they're
Mhm.
asking the right questions. How do you use AI technologies to become a better self, right? To 10x your output. And if you can't answer those questions, regardless of which role you're applying, you're losing this battle. And I think that's where us as the agencies have to play the role in educating not only the senior suite executives, but actually all the way down and bring the educational content and help people to embrace the technology, not be scared of it, because it's not a question whether it's here or it's coming. It's already it's done. It's happening today. And the beast is out of the box, and now we all together have to figure out how to embrace and empower ourselves to take us to the next move forward. So
Yeah.
I want to bring up the another kind of interesting aspect. So we talked about the investors
Mm.
and their perspective. We're also talking about the large enterprises challenges and red tapes and all the things that they're having, and they can afford to work on the small little pilots from X number of dollars for a couple of months with no strings attached. And I think it helps to kind of bypass or tension on the red tape and regulatory aspects and give it a try and flavor. But let's talk a
Mhm.
little bit about the mid-sized businesses that are, I think they're kind of caught in the middle. They
Right.
feel they have to be with the large. They try to compete, but they don't have the resources. And so what do they do? Like, how do they go about it? They bake home bakes like mom and pop shops. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah. I mean, I think you highlighted this slide pretty well in terms of, like a little bit of a red, and they are truly caught in the middle at some level. And that smells, of course, challenge, but it also smells opportunity. If they do it right, they can really leverage AI to be a competitive advantage to them relative to everyone else who is not adopting, AI in their industries. And if that the mindset changes around, hey, this can be an enabler, I can see true ROI. It's not a true replacement of a role. It might be a replacement of future roles in the sense that I don't have to add more headcount. I can use existing headcount with AI, etc. And so they can truly use that as a competitive advantage towards all their customers. And I'll give you a very specific use case in our industry. In the compliance world, how compliant and how fast you can get compliant is your ability to keep contracts with your customers, and your ability to be able to sell with your customers sort of holds true. If you're slow to get compliant, or if you're not compliant, then you essentially your customer is going to move to someone else, to go to another supplier. So your competitive advantage is in the fact that, if I'm always compliant, if I'm always market ready, if I'm always on top of my compliance use cases, then I'm always going to have this customer relationship maintained. Okay, great. Well, the fact that you use AI to do that, and to optimize your processes, and automate, etc., now gives you a competitive advantage over all the other folks who are not using AI and are still doing it manually, and they're slow, and they're trying to figure out their customer contracts, etc. So you can see how especially for those mid markets, this can be a competitive edge if they do it right. And the biggest problem with these folks is they should definitely not try to do it themselves, in my view. And I think that's where the big trap is. To the points we made before, you have a talent problem, you have a handling a data problem, you have the ability to think through all the workflows. All that is not easy to figure out, right? And so being able to work with service providers, work with like other agencies, etc., in my view, is the right way to pilot some of these projects, see that you're getting value out of it, and then make a scale play out of that. So as much as it might smell like they're stuck in the middle, I think it's also an opportunity for these folks.
And it's opportunity for the agencies as well, working with the mid-sized companies, because it gives the speed to deal with them, right? They are not as regulated as the procurement process is much faster. They're much more willing to experiment and try without being red taped through, from 5 to Z steps in a procurement lifecycle. And I think for agencies, it's a smart move to really do the agile pricing that can accommodate the mid-sized companies without breaking the bank and give them an opportunity to give the competitive advantage. We ourselves focusing on the contact centers, right? And this is a crucial expense for most organizations, profit or nonprofit, especially nonprofit organizations. When you talk about your customer support, your call centers, these
Mhm.
expenses are drastically expensive for the internal customers, let's say your internal help desk, IT support, whatever, or external customers, inquiries, information, retail. That cost can be substantially mitigated with the comprehensive, robust technologies at a fraction of the cost. And I think there are a lot of questions coming up in terms of like, well, where do I start? Like, how much does it cost? Can we even afford it? If you're at an enterprise level company, you can spend thousands on the deal. When you're a mid-sized company, you may be much more cost conscious. And reality is that pricing of the AI aspect, right, and the security of it goes drastically up. The prices go drastically down from the operating standpoint. And I think a lot of smart enablers, right? Smart agencies that do they build a solution, they build the efficiency in cost for themselves first. So as you say, like you are more efficient as a CEO, I'm sure your marketing team is much more efficient with AI automations, and you are cost conscious and you can pass on that knowledge and expertise and help the mid-sized companies to mitigate. So because the agile startups are very rarely a large enterprise businesses. So it leads me to the next kind of subject that I really want to dive in. I kind of highlighted the top 10 questions that are most commonly asked nowadays. And I wanted to hear what kind of questions do you hear from your customers or investors or you from the board that are typical pain points that I think the audience can be very benefit from.
Yeah. I mean, you've covered some good ones here. I'll just add on to this and we can touch upon some of these too. Like one area of and to go back to your point around cost specifically, we see that question a lot, right? Like, oh, how much does this cost? And what about the costs? And oh, is it too expensive, et cetera, et cetera. And I think even there, the mindset has to change, right? Because you cannot compare the cost of an AI solution to the cost of a software as a service application. You have to compare it to the human costs that are needed to effectively achieve the outcome that you care about. So again, to give you the compliance use case, hey, for me to achieve my compliance targets, to keep my current customers happy, to make sure that I can ship on time, I can achieve my revenue goals, blah, blah, blah. For the year, I need 5 compliance engineers. Okay, they're all going to cost me, you know, 60, 70, $80,000 a year. I only have one on the team right now. I have to hire these folks. I have to train them, blah, blah, blah. My total cost is going to be $1 million all in. Okay. Or I can keep my existing compliance engineer on the team and empower them with an AI solution that costs me $5,000 a month. Now that solution as a whole, or that combination, is going to cost me, way lower than what I would take to go build out an entire team, but it's going to be more expensive than a traditional SaaS solution. So, and I think that's where I think the mindset should change. The ROI has to be viewed from the perspective of cost savings, time savings, from the perspective of productivity increases relative to people costs as a whole, as opposed to just pure software budgets. And when you look at it from that lens, a lot of companies will realize that there's just very obvious ROI in place, and compare it to building your own team and doing the entire thing manually, as opposed to using an AI plus some people to kind of handle this entire operation for me. So that's, I think, one case that I've seen a lot come across. And again, it comes down to the educational aspect. We have to educate the folks on how to think about the ROI, and it's very different than the ROI for traditional software.
Makes sense. And I think approaching AI implementation projects should not be that much different than any other software optimization processes. Right? You need to really understand, answer the first questions. Why are you doing this in the first place? AI or not? What are you trying to change? What are the biggest pain point that you try to be solved? Believe it or not, today's world with AI capabilities, if you look at the front row, you can solve almost any problem that you have with a combination of AI plus automation. I mean, maybe we'll solve cancer problems relatively soon as well, hopefully. So the
Yes.
question is that it's not either whether it's possible, Is it what exactly are you trying to solve and why? And Kamal, I have a question actually coming in from one of our watchers, and it says AI today feels a lot like a crypto rush of the last decades, right? Everyone wants it, but most ventures may not be viable. How may how can investors separate real opportunities from the hype? So that I think that's from the investor so can you put your investor hat on and give a little bit insight for the angel investors or VC capitals? They're kind of following the trend. They've burned a little bit down the road. And how can they really
Yeah.
separate the real business opportunity from the hype?
Yeah. I mean, and Vincent, who asked this question, I'll go back to some of again the basics that we talked about. Right? Is first the first few questions are around asking whether it makes sense to even build an AI company as opposed to just doing some old school automation or building an agency or something else, right? And it comes down to, am I handling a lot of data? Is this data handled by sophisticated operators who have specialized knowledge? And is there repeatability in the workflows? And if there is, then likely you want to build an AI company. The second question to ask is, why wouldn't someone like an OpenAI or Claude or one of these other Anthropic or some of these other companies build what you're trying to build? And are there specific use cases that you have knowledge about that, or that your solution sort of cares about, that is different from what could just be embedded within the workflow? You've got to ask yourself, the persona or the user of your product, why wouldn't they just go to GPT and do exactly what they're trying to do with Certivo or with voice to me? So I think those are the kind of questions to certainly ask. And then there are the more traditional kind of VC questions, right, around how many customers do you have, are they willing to pay, blah blah blah, all those stuff. But at least from an AI perspective, my question is to just make sure that, one, the workflows are very very clear. And if it's not clear what the workflows for the company that you're solving for and how AI is embedding and solving for the outcome that you care about, and the ROI is not clear in how you're delivering your solution, then there is a challenge. So I think probing a lot on that question around ROI, around value creation, around workflows, around efficiency, around productivity is, I think, a very key piece of how VCs can get more insight. Product is not the answer. It's the outcome and the ROI and the value creation that is more important. Like, anyone can build an AI product. And today, in fact, it's easier to build a product thanks to the democratization of software as a whole. So anyone can build an AI product tomorrow. So the question is, how are you getting the right distribution? Are you able to create enough value? And are people willing to pay for that value? I think comes down to the basics of any good business venture, in my view.
Kunal, you're absolutely right. And I just want to add to what you just said. Absolutely. With the vibe coding, any smart kid nowadays can create an app or solution or a product pretty much overnight or over the weekend. That's not really the value comes in. The value comes in the same way from the long-term expertise and understanding the pain points. We're specializing, like we AI voice tech, right? But we don't do AI voice tech. We enable voice capabilities to the enterprise platforms that were never designed to speak. And to your point, whatever OpenAI, Microsoft, or Amazon will go inside of ServiceNow, inside of Pega, inside of Appian, inside of Salesforce, create a digital workforce that can talk to you, see you, engage with you, and perform workflows all in the same place, become your digital employee for $1 an hour, right? And not $10 or $15 or $20 an hour, and can be empowered workforce for your team to perform tasks to support your customer support, to support your customer clients, it probably is not, right? And the value really comes from the understanding and expertise for the enterprise platforms like ServiceNow and others that
Mhm.
people don't want to have multiple logs in different places. We're buried into endless subscriptions and endless logs in and passwords. We want to have frictionless interactions with the platform that we use the most. If you run your operations in large enterprise companies, the last thing you want to even log in and check your inbox. The
Mhm.
less buttons you have to go in, the less numbers or phone you need to pick up, the less touch points to get your problem solved, that would really drives the value. And we're specializing into optimize this entire workflows to make people engage with each other and with digital workforce seamlessly inside their large enterprise systems and deliver the exceptional customer support for people. And that's where I think no one else from the large enterprise models will be interesting of doing, right? I mean, because it requires a deep knowledge and understanding in architecture and structure and design and the workflows for the unique enterprise platforms. And I think that's where, and again, we now can do much more with power of AI, right? We have the voice capability that really sounds like human. They can interact, they speak 40 languages, and we can deliver much more value upfront. But ultimately, is the depths of the understanding and pain points of your customers that really drives the value, not the AI itself.
100%. In fact, you bring up an interesting point that I'll just touch upon very quickly, which is maybe a slight deviation. But in traditional software or product management, you think about, oh, how much usage is happening on the app, and how many people are logging in every day and using the app. In the AI world, it's actually kind of flipped if you think about it, right? Because it's if you're not getting a lot of usage from the app and the AI is doing a lot of the work, then you're actually successful and it's delivering the outcome. So product usage might not be the best indicator of just success, right? At some level, it's to your point, is do you really, in on my case, do you really want to wake up every morning and solve for compliance? Probably not. It's a necessary evil that you as a company have to do. You have to be compliant with all your regulations. Do you really want to invest people time into that? Do you want to go create a training program? Like, is it even worth your cost? Maybe not, right? Maybe you should just give it over to an agency, or that uses AI to help you, achieve the outcome that you care about. And so it's sort of, again, it's just, everyone's learning, everyone's going through this sort of phase, and it's a little bit of a difference in thinking than more traditional ways of operating companies.
Yes, and the fact is that when AI optimization and automation runs on the back end seamlessly, and let's say you're a help desk person, right? You're like your regular user. You log in the morning, and the work is pretty much pre-done for you, and you need to just validate it, and you have all the records, all the tracking, who called, who reached out, what questions, what's been problem, what's been, and you're reviewing this without
Mhm.
actually pressure and stress of picking up the phone calls and juggle your time schedule. You don't really need to say like, hey, I'm using this. It's actually using on its own and solve the part of the process flow that every organization has. Let's say your process flow for whatever, right, has 10 steps, and if you can optimize and automate three of them, five of them, or six of them, how much more leverage would you have in terms of comparison to your competitors? How much value you'll add back and time back to your own employees? You can drive efficiency. You can re-educate and repurpose or kind of reassign your teams that are stop doing the repetitive tasks and embrace them to become the AI advocate. They can do so much more now. They're not going to lose the job. I love this example when people are starting to talk about, okay, well, I'm going to take the jobs. We're going to go lose the jobs. People are going to get fired. When New York back in the day, when we shifted from carriages to the first cars,
Mm.
the people in New York City still had to go from point A to point B, and they used horses and carriages. The carriage riders would be the single source of transportation. When the cars were introduced, what happened to the carriage riders? There's still a need. There's still a need. The need didn't go away. The
Mhm.
means how to get from point A to point B gets so much easier, faster, and efficient.
Mhm.
So with the carriage ride, they had to upskill and become a taxi drivers. Yes, there's some of them that opt out, but it's up to the person to decide whether or not you really want to jump from the carriage into the vehicle that gets you faster, gets you more efficient, gets you more income ultimately. But it requires an upskill level on individual level. You need to create this, ignite the curiosity and lifelong learning on a hyper speed mode that we were never
Mhm.
challenged to do that before. And I think it's a mental shift for a lot of people who are actually doing the job or feel like their job is at risk.
Mhm.
That it's up to not up to corporations, up to them to really show the value that they can use, adopt, and implement AI to turn them into much more valuable asset and jump into this space shuttle that takes them from the same job from point A to point B 10 times faster.
Exactly. Yeah, the mindset has to shift to outcomes as opposed to
Mhm.
tasks, right? And I think if all of us as part of our jobs think about, hey, what outcome am I accountable for? And how do I achieve that outcome faster, better, cheaper? That's going to, give you a sort of a different that mindset has to sort of change. And trust me, as a manager before and everything, that's what I would look for from my employees and my folks as well. It's really about I care about them delivering results as opposed to the tasks that they do on a day-to-day basis. And so I think, if the mindset shifts to say, hey, for me to be able to achieve this outcome, I can do it faster, 10 times, etc., and using the power of agents, etc., that's ultimately success for you in your career. And again, I hate to say this, but I think AI can be a career enabler for people as opposed to a replacement for jobs. And I think that's the mindset change that people have to look at.
Awesome. Well, I guess we're right almost at the top of the hour. Kunal, it's been a pleasure to have you here. We're planning to have more sessions like this, maybe a couple of times a month, to really bring the awareness of what's happening in AI space and what it really means to people. I do believe that there's a power of AI and humans versus AI versus humans, and we
Yes.
can together can accomplish so much more. And again, we're in all this together.
I agree. I agree. Well, yeah, thanks, Eva, for having me on. It was a really great, good discussion. And yeah, we got to, as you rightly said, there's a lot of everyone's learning as they go through this transformation. But where I think we're all cautious about it. But we're all, at least I am very, very bullish about and its applications. And if done right, if done well, there are tremendous value creating benefits in my opinion.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, I appreciate everybody who watched us today. Until next time, have a great rest of your day. Bye.